Skip forward to January 8th of 1886, and Timothy Drew, also known as Noble Drew Ali, is born. Several details of Drew Ali's early life are uncertain, as true information became mixed with that of legend by his devout followers. He is believed to have been born Timothy Drew on January 8th of 1886 in North Carolina. Sources differ as to his background and upbringing. One report says that he was an orphan son of 2 former slaves born in a Cherokee tribe, while other describes him as the son of John A. Drew Quitman, military and political leader of the Cherokee Nation, and Eliza Turner Quitman, full-blooded Washita Tunica mother. One version of his life, common among members of the Moorish Science Temple, holds that Drew was raised by an abusive aunt who once threw him into a furnace. This version holds that he left home at 16 and joined a band of gypsies who took him overseas to Egypt, Morocco, and Middle East. It's possible that Drew Ali did actually travel to Egypt and Morocco, but historians believe that after leaving North Carolina, he moved to Newark, New Jersey, where he worked as a train expressman. In 1913, Drew Ali formed the Canaanite Temple in Newark. Drew Ali and his followers migrated while planting congregations in Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and Detroit. Finally, Drew Ali settled in Chicago in 1925, saying the Midwest was closer to Islam. The following year, he officially registered Temple Number 9. There he instructed followers not to be confrontational, but to build up their people to be respected. In this way, they might take their place in the United States of America by developing a cultural identity that was congruent with Drew Ali's beliefs in personhood. In the late 1920s, journalists estimated the Moorish Science Temple had 35,000 members in a total of 17 temples in cities across the Midwest and the Upper South. The ushers of the temple wore black fezzes. The leader of a particular temple was known as a Grand Sheik or governor. Noble Drew Ali was known to have had several wives. According to the Chicago Defender, he claimed the power to marry and divorce at will. The Moorish Science movement was reportedly studied and watched by the Chicago police and by the FBI. In early 1929, following a conflict over funds, Claude Green Bay, the business manager of Chicago Temple Number 1, split from the Moorish Science Temple of America. He declared himself Grand Sheik and took a number of members with him. On March 15th, Green Bay was stabbed to death at the Unity Hall of the Moorish Science Temple on Indiana Avenue in Chicago. Drew Ali was out of town at the time, as he was dealing with former Supreme Grand Governor Lomax Bay, Professor Muhammad, who had supported Green Bay's attempt coup. When Drew Ali returned to Chicago, the police arrested him and other members of the community on suspicion of having investigated the killing, but no indictment was sworn for Drew Ali at that time. What you just heard is what you will find across the internet about Noble Drew Ali. If you should look and just surfacely check things like Wikipedia and some of the Moorish Science Temple websites. But the truth is actually much different. After doing some heavy research and taking a look at the Newark newspapers at the time that Noble Drew Ali was actually located in that area, I found some alarming things. The Newark newspaper articles of Dats Thomas Drew, Professor Drew, and Noble Drew Ali are actually all the same person. With this established, we can treat the Newark newspaper descriptions about the claims of Thomas Drew as some of the earliest known such artifacts concerning noble Drew Ali, and therefore as crucial pieces of information for understanding his pre-Moorish Science Temple of America life. According to the news reports, in June of 1916, Drew Ali had been operating what he called his occult office at 22 School Street for at least several weeks, during which time he had demonstrated magical powers and had given mystical advice to hundreds of people. Although the business cards he handed out during this period stated that he would read a person's future for free, once visitors arrived, he typically charged them at least $1 to perform his various services. Fortune-telling, which he did using a crystal ball placed upon a piece of black velvet, was one of his cheapest powers. Another was the eating of several nails in one sitting. For those who are interested in seeing live performances of some of the amazing escape acts recently popularized by Harry Houdini, Drew Ali also broke locks, escaped from handcuffs, and bent iron bars, the articles say. Items he supplied himself for the performance in the manner typical of magicians who performed similar escape acts. His most expensive feats, however, were those dealing with healing. Drew Ali claimed he could cure, according to the Evening News, aches, pains, fevers, consumption, convulsion, lumbago, heart disease, indigestion, paralysis, nervousness, bronchitis, asthma, fits, deafness, and blindness. And he especially emphasized his ability to heal infantile paralysis. He was able to perform such feats, Drew Ali insisted, by either breathing on the afflicted or passing to them the magnetic influences in his blood, thereby killing the germs, he claimed. The mystic's single most expensive cure was the ejection of all evil spirits and influences from each individual, giving them the ability to sleep at night in peace. The available evidence suggests that in 1916, Drew Ali was not claiming any connection to Islam, but rather identifying with folk religion, occultism, and non-Islamic Oriental themes. In addition to stating that he was an East Indian from Virginia and an Egyptian adept student, as noted in Chapter 1 of the Before the Fez book. That reports from the period indicated that Drew Ali said that he was born with second sight, and that he later cultivated his skills through a combination of travel to India and correspondence courses, and obtaining a book containing the wisdom of Indian yogis and men of magic, none of which are claims that suggest a distinctly Islamic identity at all. Furthermore, instead of wearing a fez or turban, as he was known to always do while in public in the late 1920s, at the time, Drew Ali was garbed in what would only be described as a loosely fitting, multicolored gown and a brilliant purple hood covering his entire head. Again, nothing indicating an overtly Islamic identity whatsoever. However, it is possible that Drew Ali was undergoing an identity change at the time, after failing to use his powers to free himself from the local jail while awaiting trial for his recent charges. Drew Ali indicated that several years before he had been attacked by what he called a brainstorm while he was in Basking Ridge, roughly 25 miles west of Newark. Prior to the brainstorm, Drew Ali had been an untamed spirit that jails, straitjackets, or handcuffs could not hold. But the incident apparently left him sapped of his abilities, even forcing him to use a crystal ball to straighten his eyes, he claimed. If nothing else, the arrest was forcing Drew Ali to temper his claims of mystical power. A month after his June 1916 arrest, Drew Ali was convicted for practicing medicine without a license and was sentenced to 18 months in prison. Although it is not entirely clear how much of this sentence he actually served, in any case, when he reappeared in Newark in 1920, it was learned by police that the healer had been very active over the past few years and had accumulated patients in every big city in the East. As described in Chapter 2, by this time, Drew Ali, although he was still focused on healing people and was apparently still wearing a robe and hood, and not the suit and fez that he would later typically wear, now was claiming to be Muslim, not an East Indian any longer. Drew Ali's teachings may have changed by this point as well. This is suggested by the fact that it was only in 1920 that he was recorded as making references to horoscopes, saying he had raised the dead, refused to take oaths, insisting that healing comes from African Americans only through belief in both him and their God, and attempting to sell a book he would continue to use through the Moorish Science Temple of America period of his life that he described as continuing the 18 years of Christ's life that is silent to your Holy Bible, which was undoubtedly Dowling's Aquarian Gospel. His practices seem to have shifted too, whereas in 1916 he healed people by breathing on them and passing magnetic influences into their blood, but in 1920 he repeatedly employed water, oil, and laying of hands, the previously described chanting in an inner chamber. Despite these changes, however, Drew Ali was brought to court yet again, this time for 2 false pretense charges, a set of larceny charges, and collecting fees for health services charges. It was perhaps due to these legal troubles and the healer's almost inevitable incarceration in 1921 that Suleiman was possibly able to snatch up several of Drew Ali's believers in the following years. The only currently available additional piece of contemporary evidence that we have for Drew Ali's activities prior to the Moorish Science Temple of America was established in Chicago. It is a single newspaper article from early December 1923. Here it is indicated, as mentioned in the previous chapter, that at the time Drew Ali was still going on as Thomas Drew and was still regarded primarily as a healer, not as a formal religious leader, whose residence was still at 181 Warren Street, although he also performed his services in New York City. And despite the fact that these many new pieces of evidence help flesh out some of Drew Ali's backstory, they do not tell us much about his pre-1916 life, and they provide virtually no new clues about any formal religious organization that he may have established in 1913. That is, other than suggesting that even if Drew Ali had actually started an organization in 1913, it almost certainly was not centered on teaching African Americans that they were descendants from Muslim Moors. In fact, the absence of a mention of an organized group, combined with Abdat's biological evidence that places him in Virginia in 1910 and early 1916 might cause one to question the veracity of Noble Ali's later claim about founding the organization in Newark in 1913. Indeed, the fact that the Great Seal of the Moorish Science Temple of America contained as the founding date May 1st, 1916, which is extremely close to the date that Drew Ali had set up in his Newark office, from which, as far as we currently know, he only vended his healing services, suggests that the Moorish Science Temple of America founding date may only refer to the formal establishment of Drew Ali's healing business.